Alright, what is going on? What's happening? How's everyone doing today? My name is Chuck and welcome back to a brand new video. So today I'm going to go through and give you guys my best meta loadouts for all the assault rifles here in Warzone. And no, I'm not going to cover every single assault rifle because, well, all the assault rifles aren't exactly meta. Some are just kind of a lot worse than others and don't really fit in any way, shape, or form. So basically, I'm just going to give you guys the most effective assault rifles and the top loadouts with them. If you think you enjoy the video, make sure you guys give it a like in the next 5 seconds for some good luck and hit that subscribe button with all notifications turned on because I'm on the road to 800,000 subscribers. It'd be amazing if you join the squad. Okay, so we have to jump into this here. This is going to be probably one of the top ARs, if not the top AR to use in Warzone right now, aka the Krig 6. So I got a pretty awesome build here to show you guys. So the first thing we're doing is we're going to hop into that muzzle category and we're going to go down to the very bottom here and equip that agency suppressor. We're putting this on here because this is the suppressor that is dedicated more or less for your longer range ARs and sometimes more or less an SMG. After that season 4 loaded update, they slow down the TTK of a lot of stuff. So sometimes you have to put that agency on, you know, an SMG when you should be using the regular suppressor. But for all AR builds, we're going to be using the agency here, or the GRU, depending on which gun it is. So we're going to throw the agency on here for the Krig. Next up in the barrel section, what we're doing here is, normally speaking, you know, previously I would have used the 19.7 Ranger barrel, as that one's for sure still really good. But I'm now going to use the 15 CMV mil spec barrel, and this is essentially the task force barrel of this gun. So it gives you that bullet velocity, horizontal recoil control, effective damage range, and vertical recoil control. So this barrel right here is going to allow you to not have to use a foregrip on this thing, which is incredibly nice. Now on the ammunition side of things, we're going to go ahead and throw on the Snag 60 round magazine. Y'all already know, if you watch the channel, I'm a 60 round magazine kind of guy, so I'm always going to throw on that 60 if possible. I mean, there's very rare occasions where I won't, but as a primary AR, as a true AR using this with a scope on it, you're going to want to run a 60 round magazine just because, I mean, you're going to be putting a lot of bullets down range, so it doesn't make sense to throw on something like a 45. It really doesn't, you know, it just doesn't make sense. Nor does it make sense to throw on the fast mag because this will chalk your ADS speed a little bit more than you really want to. So we got, you know, the best of both worlds here, a pretty solid reload speed, also 60 rounds. You can't really go wrong with this. And now because we don't have a foregrip on this gun, we can go ahead and throw on a rear grip to kind of speed up our mobility a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and throw on the Serpent wrap here. This is going to increase my ADS time while only giving me a con of sprint to fire time, which is realistically not that big of a deal. You don't really notice it all that much. I just really like that increased ADS time. I know you can, some people probably want to use the airborne elastic wrap, but it does have quite a few more cons on it, and I would not really suggest to go ahead and use that. I'll just go ahead and use the Serpent wrap. This has treated me very well every single time I throw it on the Krig, so you guys should definitely try this out. And then to finish out this build right here, we're going to go ahead and throw on the Axle Arms 3x scope. I absolutely love using the Axle Arms 3x. I think this is a fantastic, you know, scope to use. So you guys should definitely go ahead and try this out. Overall, this is an amazing Krig build here. This is probably, you know, like I said, the most meta AR out there right now. Definitely go to give it a try if you are not using the Krig already. It is super good. So now we have a pretty cool variant here for the next gun. This is going to be the Cold War AK-47, not the Modern Warfare one, because that one's just not really good in any way, shape, or form. So we're going to be using this gun, and this is not necessarily going to be made as a primary use AR, though you can for sure make it as an AR. It is definitely speaking a lot better as a hybrid AR SMG, kind of ran as a secondary or maybe sniper support. So we're going to kind of make it as that. So for the first thing here on this thing, we're going to go ahead and throw on the regular suppressor because, like I said, this is going to be used as more of like a sniper support / hybrid AR SMG. So we're going to be throwing on the regular suppressor as opposed to the GRU. If it was a primary AR, we'd use the GRU, but because it's not, we're using the regular one. Next up, we're skipping over the barrel category and we're going right in here to the laser, and we're going to throw on the Tiger Team Spotlight. This is going to increase our movement speed and our aim walking movement speed because we're trying to use this at that closer to medium range. This is going to be hugely beneficial for us because we're just gonna be able to move around very quickly, and that is a huge thing when it comes to surviving in Warzone, is being able to move around quickly. Because if you don't have a gun that has good mobility and close range, the chances are that person's gonna be able to lock onto you really easily. So you want to eliminate that as much as possible, and this is going to help you do that. For the ammunition side of things, what I'm actually going to suggest to you guys is not to use a 60 round magazine on this thing, but to use the 45 round. I think with the AK, because it doesn't have as much of a high fire rate, you can definitely get away with running a 45 round magazine on this thing. Also, because we're trying to maintain super high mobility, throwing on that 60 is going to slow you down a little bit too much for a close range gun. So that's why we're going to use the 45 on here, because I mean, if we put a 60 on, you know, an SMG, that's fine, but because it's an AR, it's going to slow you down a little bit too much. So we're going to use the 45. Making our way to the rear grip section, we're going to go ahead and throw on the Serpent grip here for that increased ADS time. It does give you a con of sprint to fire time, but don't worry, we are going to eliminate that entirely here with our next attachment choice. For the stock, this is going to be our last attachment, and we're going to throw on the KGB skeletal stock for that increased ADS fire move speed, aim walking movement speed, and sprint to fire time. Overall, absolutely love the Cold War AK-47. I love using it as more or less as like an hybrid AR SMG. Super fun thing to use. It kills really fast. So if you're looking to kind of switch it up a little bit and run something that's still meta, definitely give this a try. Next up, we're going to be taking a look at the Cold War C58. I know this thing did receive a little bit of a nerf, but a lot of people still really enjoy using the C58 assault rifle because it still is genuinely a really hard-hitting gun. So we're going to jump in this here. First thing we're throwing on this is going to be the agency suppressor. This gun's going to have a little bit of that weird recoil, so we want to minimize this as much as possible, and that's why we're going to throw on the agency. This is indeed going to be the best option for this gun. For the barrel, in order for this gun to be the most effective, we have to run the 18.5 Task Force. This is just the best barrel by far for this thing. Bullet velocity, horizontal and vertical recoil control, and that effective damage range. I mean, you really can't get much better than this. You're not going to be a super, like, you know, run and gun type of machine with this thing because, well, frankly speaking, it's an AR that's going to have a scope on it, so you're not really trying to get up in people's faces at close range. That's why you have something like an SMG, maybe like a Bullfrog, a MAC-10, anything else like that, and you'd be taken care of in that regard. But we're going to be running the Task Force here for this. To add to some more recoil control, we're going to go ahead and throw on the Field Agent grip for that horizontal and vertical. This is going to mitigate as much of that weird recoil I was talking about as possible. I don't think I'd run anything else on this. I mean, I've seen people maybe not run foregrips pre-nerf, but for sure, since the nerf, you have to run the Field Agent grip. You just have to. In the ammunition side of things, what we're going to do is we're going to throw on the Stenag 55 round magazine. This has got actually a really solid reload time on this thing, so you definitely do not need the fast mag. And also, I mean, 55 rounds on a slower firing weapon that does a pretty decent amount of damage. I mean, you pretty much have like a win-win situation here. This is a really solid option, so always run the Stenag 55, and you really don't got to mess with it after that. I mean, there's not going to be a better option out there. And to finish this whole build off, what we're going to do is we're going to throw in the Axel Arms 3x scope, though I have seen a lot of people really start to like the Royal Cross 4x because I think that, you know, mitigated some of the recoil. So if you feel like you want to have a little bit less recoil, a little bit more zoom, you can definitely use the 4x scope, but personally, I always just end up going with the 3x because I feel like that's, you know, plenty enough for the type of engagements or the range of engagements I want to get into. But I definitely say that, hey, if you like that 4x, either or is going to work perfectly fine. So, but for me, I'm just going with the Axel Arms 3x. Absolutely love the C58. Don't use it all that much just because I like switching stuff out and switching stuff around, but it is a really, really good AR. Next up, we're going to be taking a look at a real old gun that's definitely started to make its way back into the meta because it's so real. It's just so good. And that's going to be the Grau 5.56, our first mono warfare weapon on here. So first thing is first here on the muzzle thing, we're going to be using the monolithic suppressor, that sound suppression, that damage range. Like I've said about the previous suppressors for the Cold War ones, the mono suppressor is going to be the best for this gun or for all the modern warfare weapons. There's no reason to ever use a lightweight or a tactical. It's kind of a bit of a shame they have never altered those because we have the option for the Cold War ones for the regular suppressor versus, you know, the GRU or the agency, but we just don't really have that option here for, you know, this for the modern warfare weapons. So you just always have to run the mono on every weapon no matter what. Now for the barrel section, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and throw on the Tempest 26.4 Archangel barrel. This is going to increase our damage range, bullet velocity, and recoil control. I know the Grau has a few different, attachment options in here, and I have seen some people try to run the Nexus barrel or the XRK, Zen Mark II, but I don't mess with any of the shenanigans in here. I've also seen people try to run this as an SMG by putting on maybe the ZLR Drifter barrel. I'm just going to tell y'all right now, just use the Tempest, use it as a primary AR, don't mess with it as an SMG, and you're going to be good to go. So just run this. For the underbarrel section, we're going to throw in that tried and true Commando foregrip, recoil stabilization, and aiming stability. Overall, the Commando, you really just can't go wrong with it on virtually any modern warfare gun. So I would just, if I was you guys, run the Commando. Don't think too much about it. I mean, if you can't control the recoil somehow, some way, you just need to get better. I'm just keeping it a stack with that. But you just run the Commando and you'll be good. The magazine side of things, listen, we're throwing on the 60. I don't need to explain that I'm a 60-round magazine kind of guy over and over again, but I feel like I kind of just want to. We're just throwing on this thing here. I mean, the only way I see a 50 round magazine being any bit, you know, accepted, in my opinion, is if you're playing solos. But I mean, listen, a lot of us around here, we don't be playing solos. We don't be touching that shenanigans. We're playing duos, trios, quads. We're trying to get out there and drop a lot of kills. We're trying to have a lot of fun out here. We're not trying to, you know, pussyfoot around and, you know, play kids at corner camp like that. Like, at least if they're going to be corner camping, at least you have it be a squad and be on the UAV, so you can, you know, chop up 3-4 kills yourself instead of one when some kid's playing like a weirdo. So we're playing with this 60. That's what we're doing. And last but not least, we're going straight to the laser section here because the Grau iron sights are beautiful, and this is a really, really fun gun to use with the iron sights as a primary AR. We're gonna go ahead and throw in the tack laser, and this is gonna increase your ADS speed, your aiming stability, and aim walking steadiness, aka what all that means is you're gonna ADS faster. You know, that's pretty obvious, but the aiming stability and aim walking steadiness is gonna make your gun feel like it has less recoil, and it's gonna keep it from bouncing around in any which way, shape, or form. So it will mitigate that recoil even more so you will feel like you're shooting a literal laser beam around in Warzone. It's really awesome, and I love the Grau for that reason. It's super consistent. Iron sights are great. You really can't go wrong if you're trying to run the Grau in Warzone right now. I mean, seriously, you just can't go wrong. Now we're going to take a look at a gun that got buffed here most recently, which is going to be the M13. This really wasn't in the meta in any way, shape, or form, but it has incredibly low recoil. It's got a really high fire rate, and it's got some pretty solid attachments. You can run it a variety of ways to make it effective. So let's jump into this here. First thing, muzzle category, mono suppressor. Don't really got to explain that too much to you guys. Now in the barrel section, we have a few different options, but realistically, the only good one that's going to be in here is the Tempest Marksman barrel for that damage range, bullet velocity, and recoil control. I would never suggest using the Tempest Cyclone or the Tempest Mini unless for whatever reason you're trying to use this in Modern Warfare multiplayer, and even then I would say you can get it with running the Cyclone barrel but not the Tempest Mini. So for all, you know, all intents and purposes, run the Tempest Marksman barrel, kind of leave it at that, and this is just the best one out there. Now in the underbarrel section, I did recently in my previous M13 video say I removed the foregrip from the M13, but listen, I know a lot of people out there are going to have some trouble controlling some recoil if they don't have a foregrip because it can bounce a little bit. So we're just going to go to throw in the commando foregrip here. This is going to do everything you need it to. We don't need to go crazy and run a Merc foregrip. No, we don't need to do that. We're just going to keep it with the commando, keep it very simple, and it will do the trick. In the ammunition side of things, I don't think there's any debate in here. Even if you weren't a type of guy like me, you just have to run this magazine here, the 60 rounds. And the reason being is because the M13 has such a high fire rate that it doesn't make sense for you to run the 50 round magazine, or even for that matter, the 300 blackout rounds. These things are dog water, trash. Don't ever use these things. I don't care what it says on here, damage range. No visible tracers, no enemy skulls. It doesn't matter. These things are terrible. Don't ever use them. Run the 60 rounds. If you use the blackout rounds, it's like telling me you're a bad player without telling me you're a bad player, like by using those things. So run the 60. And to finish this whole build off, you guys can run this in a few different ways. I personally really like running the Corp Combat Hollow Sight if I'm going to run this as like more of a mid-range AR, and I don't want to have super like a, you know, a lot of zoom. But if I'm going to run this as, you know, longer range, put on that VLK 3x optic, and man, like, hey, this thing, you're really going to be frying people at distance because the bullet velocity is going to be great, the recoil is going to be non-existent, and you got a great zoom which has very clear sights. So you can't go wrong with the VLK 3x optic or the Corp Combat Hollow. Just depends on what you feel more comfortable with, but I wouldn't really recommend any of these other optics in here. I would just stick with the ones that I'm recommending to you right here, and just kind of call it a day at that. This is a banger setup here for the M13. Really happy this gun is, you know, a lot more effective nowadays. But overall, give it a shot if you haven't already. If you want to try something a little bit different that's also still meta, there's just a lot of meta slots right now. And I figured to balance this whole video out and give you 3 Cold War ARs and 3 Modern Warfare ARs, we're gonna go ahead and throw on here the M4A1 because this thing got like buffed and also slightly nerfed, but it's still incredibly good and like a lot of fun to use. So the M4A1 here, the first thing we're throwing on this thing, mono suppressor. Not gonna explain that too much. Next attachment we're getting into is gonna be the barrel section, and we're going to throw on the stock M16 Grenadier barrel for that damage range, bullet velocity, and recoil control. I want to explain something here real quick though. The Corvus Custom Marksman, yes, it does everything that the stock M16 barrel does, but it does less of it. So it does the exact same thing, but less in every single category. In Warzone, you want the longest barrel on your AR. That's just kind of how it is. You just want that because, I mean, you're not really concerned with ADSing super quickly, and that little minimalistic difference you're going to get with the Corvus in comparison to stock M16 just ain't worth it nowadays. So just run the M16. In the barrel section, we're gonna go ahead and throw on that Commando foregrip. Absolutely love the Commando on the M4. I don't think there's any other way to run this gun, to be honest with you guys. I've tried running like, you know, the Merc or even sometimes the Ranger if I was trying to use the gun way back when I felt like it had a tad bit more recoil, but I just realized that that was kind of pointless, that I really wasn't getting any benefit. I was just slowing myself down. So just run the Commando and don't really mess with any of those other shenanigans. It is not worth the sacrifice. In the ammunition side of things, what we're going to do is we're going to throw on the 60 round magazine here like usual. Like I said, with, you know, the Grau or any other AR, it's only acceptable to run something that's not a 60 if you're playing solos, in my opinion. I've seen people like not run a magazine at all when they're playing solos, which is a little bit cracked. That's a little bit crazy. Wouldn't do that. Wouldn't go that far. But we're running the 60 here, and just listen, like I said about, you know, the 300 blackout rounds, avoid these things like it's the plague. You know, tell me you're a bad player without telling me you're a bad player. If you run one of these things, you try to tell me this is good, you're telling me you're bad. Don't do it. So we're just running the 60. And to finish this puppy off, much like you can use the M13, which I talked about here at different sites, you can use the Corp Combat Holo on this thing. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be, you know, it's going to look actually really cool as well, and it's just going to perform great. Or you can run the VLK 3x optic. This is a really solid choice for, you know, this weapon here. And probably, to be honest with you, I prefer the VLK on this gun as opposed to the Corp Combat Holo, but I really like it. This is really, really solid here. So hopefully y'all enjoyed this video. This is a really solid setup for the M4A1. If you did, make sure you guys give it a like, hit that subscribe button with all notifications turned on, and just don't know which look out, don't be Randy, and I'm out. Peace.